record on the computer. Okay, so we are recording. So I'll do a little introduction first.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to one of the Shelf Help expert sessions, which was going to be our Instagram Live. Actually, it was an Instagram Live, but the internet had better, different ideas. But we are actually talking to the awesome Amanda Byram today about perfectionism and why we need to, how we can combat that. So we feel like it's been a good lesson, right?
This was all a big setup, Tony. We completely set this up so that everybody who was getting grouchy about it not being perfect could now just be really calm about it. You see, exactly. It worked itself out in the end.
It was all planned. It was all planned, right? So our expert sessions are basically a way to speak to experts across all areas of well-being. So kind of like mental well-being, physical well-being. I feel like all of this is needed, especially now. And you seem to kind of cover so many of these well-being areas now. Like I love the idea of you being a well-being warrior. But what I'm really surprised about, I mean, I'm not surprised you've written a book, and I'm not surprised you've written a book about kind of mental health, physical health, that kind of stuff. But I am surprised to learn that you did have a problem with perfectionism and feel like you have done so much work on yourself. So
yes, yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sure how much you heard when we were on Insta Live, but I guess I'll talk about it again because it's really, really important.
Yeah, sure.
You know, perfectionism is I think is probably a root cause of so many issues, especially in this day and age, and especially with social media. You know, when I was writing the book, I did a lot of research, and actually, when I started to write the book, it was interesting because I started with the title in mind: How to Look and Feel Good in Your 40s and Beyond. And as I started writing, it was very, very quickly as I got into the first couple of chapters that I realized that wasn't the title of the book at all. That the book was very much about going a lot deeper. And, you know, because of all the issues that I'd had as a young girl from the age of 15, I realized I had to just do a lot of soul searching. And obviously I've done a lot of soul searching and a lot of self-help over the years. And that's how I've thankfully been able to get to the place I'm in today. But I had to really dig deep and understand why I started feeling the things I was feeling and thinking and being and seeing and advocating from the age of 15 until, you know, my late 30s, decades worth of self-destruction on my mind and my body. And when I looked back, a lot of things kept popping up, and perfectionism seemed to be the core of quite a few of them. And I started to study, you know, the sort of the idea of perfectionism, what that really means. There's a study done by Hewitt and Flett, and it's called the Multidimensional Perfectionism Scale. Mm-hmm. And immediately this kind of sparked out, oh, what is this in my brain? Because it just, you know, it seemed really fascinating, but sort of almost unrealistic. But perfectionism comes in three forms. One is self-oriented perfectionists. Now, self-oriented perfectionists, they sort of set themselves really high standards, really high goals in their life, which I did all the way through my life. Whether or not that stemmed from something that happened in my childhood, you know, one of my friends told me that she could see the fat popping out of my cycling shorts when I was 15. A spark did go off in my 15-year-old brain at that stage, whether it was, you know, the age of supermodels, which I grew up in, and I absolutely idolized the supermodels, whether it was the yo-yo dieting industry, the diet industry at that stage in my life was booming. You know, I did the Atkins protein only phase for 3 years, not a fruit nor a vegetable nor a carbohydrate passed my lips for 3 years. So a lot of self-destructive disordered eating happened in that stage of my life. And I believe that a lot of that was centered around self-oriented perfectionism. You know, so in my relationships, in my work, you know, I didn't want to lose to a competitor. You know, if I didn't get the bonus at work, or, you know, failing a test at school. I remember my sister and I took our driving test on the same day. She's older than me. She passed, I failed. And I don't think you know, it took me a long time to get over it, which was very strange. I sort of, you know, in my head, I was a failure. You know, I was sort of expected to be perfect and striving to be perfect so much that I was so highly critical of myself when I did fail. So that's sort of self-oriented perfectionism. So a lot of people might really, you know, resonate with that.
Yeah.
Another one is other-oriented perfectionists, which I was telling you, I'm not sure if you heard on the Zoom or not, the is live or not. It's when you think the people around you should be perfect. So I've suffered this at work. You know, I get to work, I see a script, it's not quite good enough, and I'm thinking, oh my God, they had one job to do. Writing the script was their one job, and it's not good enough. And now I've got to go home, and now I've got to spend hours amending it, and now I've got to change it. Or, you know, the camera work sort of was all over the place, or the lighting. And for a long time, I sort of projected that frustration on them. And actually, you know, who's to say that they have to beat to my drum?
Yeah.
That's so egotistical and, you know, small-minded of me. They must have had a million things going on. The Uber driver who gets you the wrong way or gets you there late, he didn't just have the one job that we proclaim he has. He probably has 10 other jobs, things that he has to do, pick up his kids. He might have been dealing with a death in the family. You just never know what other people are going through. So I think expectation is a really big part of other-oriented perfectionists. If you expect so much from everyone else around you, you're going to have confrontation, you're going to have problems within relationships. And then the final one is socially prescribed perfectionists. And this is really important because this is very, very linked to social media. And it's probably one of the reasons why there's a lot of suicide within the sort of the younger age group, and a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress and a lot of depression. And these are people that believe that a person around them, so a boss, a child, a parent, expect them to be perfect. So they put that on themselves, thinking that everyone around them. So social media, everyone needs to like my post. Everyone has to comment on my post. Why am I not getting likes? If I'm getting likes, then people must love me, right? And actually, you know, it's not true, because the minute they don't like you doesn't mean that you're rejected. It's irrelevant. You know, and consequently, self-esteem takes a really, really big hit. And I think that sort of leads to a lot of negative emotions. It leads to guilt. It leads to shame. And, you know, so perfectionism at its very core has very many branches, and it's very destructive, and it's very, very dangerous. So it's why it's sort of, you know, it's the tagline to the book, The Secret to Overcoming the Pressures of Perfection, because that seeps out into every area of your life. So for me, it was how I looked, how I acted, how I did at work, how I was in relationships, you know, ticking boxes, you know, always sort of crossing off the things on my list, being perfect, being in great shape, being, you know, the height of everything. And when those things didn't go my way, oh my God, it's devastating. So freeing yourself from expectations altogether is probably the biggest lesson you can learn from that. Because, you know, if you expect a situation to be a certain way, life doesn't happen like that. 2020 has learned us that things don't go the way they're planned. All those holidays we had to cancel, all those jobs that have been lost, all the lives that we see that we thought that were going to go a certain way that didn't. And, you know, I think you can prepare yourself for that by ditching those expectations, by stopping projecting things on other people and on ourselves. And I think it's really important to sort of, you know, get to the root of that problem, because we're seeing a big problem, especially amongst teenagers, and the rate of anxiety and depression amongst teenagers. It's really scary.
Yeah, sure. It's a massive problem. And like the thing with perfectionism is like you're never gonna win that battle, right? Because my idea of perfect isn't the same as what your idea of perfect is. And especially when you're talking about comparison. And if I validate myself based on you liking my Instagram post, or maybe tomorrow you don't like it, then what happens? You know?
Absolutely. Well, also perfect doesn't exist. There's just no such thing. You know, you get to a certain stage of doing something, you think it's perfect, and then there's something else. There's always something else. And look, life would be really boring if everything had to be a certain way. You know, we've got to take the blows, the punches. You know, human beings are messy. We're all messy. You know, and I think, like I say, if 2020 has taught us anything, there is literally no such thing as the perfect year or the perfect month or the perfect situation. I talk in the book, the story that I regale is the one of my cancelled wedding. You know, and I was reaching my 40s and I was single, and I met this guy, and he seemed perfect on paper, and he was the perfect guy, and he was good looking, and he would make a good father, and you know, he was an ex-rugby player, so he was fit, and he did all these things, and then he asked me to marry him, and I said yes, and then I went, I've just organized a wedding, and I think I've made a mistake, because I wanted to be 40 and married with children because that is what society said I should do. You know, of course. And you know, and it's not even a plan that I had. It's a plan that society had for me. I talk all the time about journalists. I'm brave enough to talk back to journalists now when they say, so are are you having children? And it's like, why do you ask those questions? I would never ask you that. You know, when I wasn't married, or do you have a boyfriend? It's like, you would never just talk to a stranger in that way, you know. So society has this expectation. And this perfect lie has sort of been shoved down our throat for a very long time. And it's the perfect pill, isn't it? You know, we're 6 years old and we see Disney princesses, and what do? They have a bit of a palaver, and then they get saved by the knight in shining armor, and he comes and he swoops them up on his horse, and then they live happily ever after. So it's no wonder that we get to the age that we get to when we get married, because that's the norm, and we have children because that's the norm. And if something goes wrong in that perfect world, we crumble because the expectation was way too high. So, you know, I don't even tell people to lower their expectations. I tell people to free themselves from expectations altogether. And that's the only way you can really be happy. And by doing that, you live in the present, and you live in the now, and you live with integrity, and you do the things that you want to do because you want to do them, not because someone else said you should.
Yeah. I think saying no to that lifestyle, though, is tough, isn't it? You have to have done the work, and you have to be very sure about yourself. Earlier we talked about, I asked you kind of like, what's a day in your life look like now? Because, you know, COVID and all that kind of stuff. And you said, let's talk about a day in my old life, or kind of like my previous life, and about waking up with the anxiety. So however well, even if you had the best job in the world, you still woke up with that feeling. So, and then you talked about, let's talk about gratitude, because you said that is something that's really kind of helped move you to this place now.
Yeah, it really has. I talked about when I used to get anxious. I was telling you about being stressed. Stress is not a word I like to use. And when I was studying NLP, neuro linguistic programming, neuro brain, linguistic words, programming, making them fit together, you know, I learned that there are certain words that you shouldn't use because they make you feel a certain way. So, you know, you'll hear a lot of people now saying FML, hashtag FML, which, you know, means my life. Why would you want to F your life? Why? You don't mean that. You're just saying it. And in turn, it's creating this negative space in your brain. You know, things like, I'm so stressed, I'm so anxious, I'm so depressed. We throw these words around like monikers that we should be proud of. And actually, we're not even thinking of the words we're saying. And the more we say them, you know, if you just kind of just stop and take a beat and wait for the word to fall out of your mouth. I did it for decades. I was the biggest self-sabotager. I was the biggest negative language user. You know, even when good things happened, it just wasn't quite good enough. And I was, you know, wanted to get to the next stage and the next stage. And so, you know, for me, it was really important to sort of switch the mindset and change that terminology, because, you know, we can run ourselves into the ground. And one of the things that I used to find was that I used to think so much about these negative things. When one thing would happen, an amassment of thoughts and emotion, a whirlwind. I mean, it was, you know, I'd write letters to myself and say, my brain feels like a washing machine and I just can't get it to stop. So one of the tips I use in the book is, you know, when you feel like that, stop, close your eyes, take a breath. Imagine a glass of water that has salt in it, and this salt has been spinning. That's your mind. And only until the salt can settle to the very, very bottom, that you can see from one side of that glass to the other, that's when you can think clearly, you can see clearly, you can do clearly, and you have the power to do that. It's just that these thoughts overwhelm you. And when I got to the point where I was able to do that, suddenly I began feeling really grateful for stuff. And it was almost like a side effect of having having clarity, having a clear mind. And, you know, a little part of that maybe was giving up alcohol as well, because, you know, I found myself in this sort of this fog, this haze of, you know, hangover, I suppose, from a Monday to Friday when you'd go drinking again. And gratitude became a really important key out of all of that for me, because, you know, I found myself saying, wow, I'm really grateful to be able to have this thought. Oh, I'm really grateful that I'm actually out running and I'm not in bed with a hangover. Or, God, I'm really grateful that I have the knowledge that I have. I'm really grateful that something in the universe gave me the push that I needed. I'm just really grateful for being able to read this self-help book. I'm really grateful that I've had this time to be single. Like all of the things that usually you'd go, oh, FML, I'm single. Now I was saying, I'm grateful for this. Why not? Because you've got two choices. You have to switch things around. And it's probably why the book is called The Switch. So your gratitude, I think, is really important. And especially people with children, I say to, like from a very early age, at night, just ask them 3 things you're grateful for today. What are the 3 things that happened today that you think are really, really brilliant? And a lot of my friends' children, they'll come up with the most beautiful things. And I say, write it in a book for them. Let them read back on them. Let them remember. Let gratitude sort of become a fabric of your emotion and your being and your personality, because that's something that we can learn and very easily unlearn. I think we unlearned it through life because, life sort of piles so much stuff on us. And it sort of takes us out of our head and it takes us somewhere else. And, it's interesting because we're so championed when we're kids. We champion our children. We were championed by our mother, our father, our aunts, our uncles, our sisters, our brothers, our siblings, our cousins. You're brilliant. You came down that slide the best. Woo, you did the best poo-poo. That's what we hear until we're about, 15 and we do some naughty things and we're told, no, that's wrong. You've been reprimanded, and probably rightly so in some instances. But unfortunately, we sort of get into our 20s, we go into the workplace where we're not hitting the bonus. We're starting to feel like all these expectations are piling on. People are saying we're not good at things. And we get to our 30s and our 40s, and all of a sudden we need self-help. So I always say, bring it back to kids, bring it back to education from a very early age. Have them deep breathe, have them cold sea swim, have them do the things that we kind of go, I'm grateful for this at the age of 47. I think we need to sort of rewind and start it sooner, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd like to know what do you, I think you wrote the book, you said earlier, I think you wrote the book because you've learned a lot and you've done a lot of work and you wanted to kind of like put this in one place so that maybe other people don't need to do the same amount.
Yes.
NLP is something that you really champion. I think is very important, the language we use and that kind of thing. What other kind of self-help or self-development practices are you a fan of?
Oh my gosh. I think for me, my own journey was based on education and learning about the physiological effects of how we speak to ourselves. So that's obviously an NLP part. For me, it was very important to understand my body because I was brutal on my body and my mind. I was brutal on, depriving myself of whole food groups. Like I said, I did the Atkins diet for 3 years, the protein phase only. I didn't eat carbs because I thought carbs before marbs was bad. All these silly things. And, like I say, these lies that have been fed to us. So for me, it was all about education and learning, learning what happens, like this glorious body, this relationship that we have with our bodies and our minds. It's become, unfortunately, when I speak to women in particular, the relationship they have with their bodies is based around disorder. It's based around shame. It's based around fear. It's based around guilt. And, it's been fed to us. So I think it's really important part of a self-help journey to know your own mind, because you're going to read a million things in magazines. You're going to read 7 pounds in 7 days. You're going to read, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, because someone else is gaining from it. It's consumerism. And I talk about consumerism in the supermarket, about how the billions have been spent on that supermarket journey. So, it's no coincidence that you walk into a baked goods section. Trust me, that's been carefully planned. That gets your saliva juices going so that by the time you get to the bits in the middle and you've got all the other stuff and you buy that all because you're hungry, and then you've got the low fat section and you take that because you just bought the croissants as well. And then you get to the final and you've got all the sweets and the crisps, and it's a journey of, it's sort of a journey that's been pushed on us. And so I always tell people, you know, a big part of my self-help was just knowing my own mind from the education that I'd learned about the reasons why we should do the things we need to do, and eat the things we eat and work out the way we need to work out. And again, you know, all of it is in moderation. I used to live a life of deprivation. So everything was, what am I not going to eat next? What am I going to deprive myself of next? How much am I going to train tomorrow? You know, talking about my old life earlier, that sense of anxiety I used to get in the morning because I knew I had to go to the gym today. There had to be an hour that I would have to put aside for the gym. And now my life is just about being calm, listening to my body. I mean, I work out maybe 2 or 3 times a week now for half an hour at home because I can't go to the gym anymore. And I actually think that's great. Before, it would be, if I didn't work out 6 days a week, I would be anxious. I would have, you know, guilt because I didn't go to the gym, or, you know, I would not be able to eat certain foods because they would make me fat, or they would just crazy stuff.
It doesn't sound like there was any enjoyment with that. Whereas now we talk, like, you've been sharing the sea swims you're doing because you're living in Hove, and it's like there's so much, like you can just see in your face when you're doing it. I mean, I think you're nuts, but it's like you're getting so much from it, and that's so much better for you, isn't it, than forcing yourself to do something because you feel like you need to look a certain way, or just because you feel like you should. Like, I think that point about why do we do what we do? It's like in every area of life, whether that's buying a supermarket or whatever.
It's bloody exhausting, I tell you that. And you know, people always say to me, like, what was your switch moment? And I think a part of my switch moment was approaching 40 and realizing, oh crap, I am knackered. Like, I am genuinely exhausted. I'm tired emotionally, I'm tired physically, I'm tired spiritually. And I was making the same mistakes over and over again. I'd learn how not to do it and I'd put that into practice. Then I would go, and I'd slip back into my old ways. And unfortunately, I speak to so many women who live that life and who live that sort of pattern of cyclical self-destruct button. And, you know, it's about taking stock and, you know, your switch moment for me, I say in the book about, it's your red or your blue pill moment. Morpheus and Neo in the Matrix. It's you got the red pill, you got the blue pill, kiddo. You've got the choice. You either take the red and go on, or as you were, or you take the blue pill and you go on a journey of self-discovery. Who knows what could happen? Take the blue pill, you know, and your switch moment is now. Your switch moment is when you're ready, you know when it is. And most of us know that something's not right. Most people who reach out to me say, I don't know what it is. I'm in a rut. I don't know how to get out of it. You know, I know things need to change. I just don't know how to change them. And it's within us all. We just need guidance. You know, there is a lack of guidance because the guidance out there, unfortunately, is steering us in the direction of the diet aisle or the crazy aisle or, you know, the money-making aisles, where actually the self-help stuff is free. It's all in here. And we've got it within ourselves to switch things up. You know, if you have bad habits, you can just as easily break them as you made them. And actually, that's why I'm doing the sea swimming, is because 21 days of doing anything in a row is habit forming. And a part of me is thinking maybe I shouldn't have chosen sea swimming as my 21 days. So, you know, I know I need to do it. And that's why I'm putting it on Instagram, because it's accountability, like we said earlier. So yeah, it's a blue pill moment, man. Like, everything is just, it's new, it's exciting, and you're going to fall and you're going to have scratches on your knee and you're going to have pains in your chest and things are going to come up and it's going to be really emotionally painful. But until you get past that stuff, then, you know, you take the red pill and you stay the same.
Yeah. I think it's, for a lot of people, it's being scared, isn't it? Scared of change. But I think most of us have got to the point where it's like, but the alternative, I don't want to do that anymore. So let's just take the blue pill and see what happens, right?
Exactly. Completely agree.
If you could describe your relationship with yourself in one word, what would it be?
Just the one?
Maybe a sentence.
Can I have more?
This is your relationship with yourself now.
With myself now, yes. It is, okay, it's calm, because it used to be frantic. It used to be desperate. It used to be so frenetic and manic. You know, I remember people, friends saying, God, you're a little bit manic. So now my relationship with myself is calm. So I find myself a lot calmer. Proud. I think I'm really, really proud of my relationship with myself. And I'm proud of, I respect myself. I respect what my body has done and what it can do. And it's learning all the time. I'm still learning. I could probably write 100 books and still never get everything out there. But I think they're probably the key words. Yeah, calm and prideful and respectful, because our bodies and our minds are capable. We are capable of so much, yet we think we're not. Since I've written the book, I think the best part of writing the book has been the DMs I've been getting from women who are saying that it's been life-changing for them. I mean, those moments are just, that's why I wrote it, 100%, because if you can change one person's mindset and outlook on life, then oh my God, that's better than any red carpet. It's better than any live TV job. It's better than an Oscar. Not that I'm ever going to get an Oscar, but hey, let's think positively. Let's manifest.
So, sounds like for me, the takeaway that you want people to have is that they can do it. Like, we can all make this switch. But if you had one piece of advice for somebody who is kind of, like you said, these people that are talking to you and saying, oh, I'm on the edge of the blue and the red pill, it's like, is there one piece of advice that might push them gently over the edge?
A good edge, you mean, not the bad edge. Not the cliff edge. I think it's important to know that it only takes a second to make that decision. Because procrastinating and thinking and worrying and fearing is a big part of not doing. So I think knowing that it only takes that second that changes you forever. So that split moment can last a whole lifetime. It can take years of painful waiting to get to that stage, but I think once you know you're ready, just it's that one moment of bravery, isn't it? And knowing that switch moment can happen now. And I think again, this is going to sound really woo-woo, but it's so important to tell yourself you love yourself. If you can't love yourself, no one can love you before you love yourself. They can try, but that person who doesn't love themselves is not going to give the energy. It's not going to give the positivity. You're not going to give the feedback. You're not going to be able to reciprocate the love that's given to you because you don't love yourself. So I've got 2 tips to do this. One is really simple. Look in the mirror. Look to me in the eyeballs, as I say. I can't remember what movie that's from, but look at yourself in the eye and say, I love you. You're brilliant. Oh my God, you are brilliant. Now, if that's too hard, the next thing I really recommend people do is get a photograph of themselves when they were a kid. It doesn't matter what age, preferably sort of under 5, because that's before, your brain starts being told other things. I have a photograph of myself as a 3-year-old. And look at that photograph, stare at that kid until you realize that that's you. At that moment that you go, oh, okay, I get it now. That kid is me. It's the same person. I've just grown up. And then apologize to her or him and say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for waiting this long, first of all, to tell you that I love you and I'm sorry. And now I'm going to give you a big hug in my mind, this like virtual hug. And you hug that 3-year-old in your mind's eye and squeeze them tight and say, this is for you. I am you. I am so bloody sorry. I'm going to change. This is it. This is my blue pill moment. Let's do this together, because that kid is you. And you would never speak unkindly to a 3-year-old child. No. You'd never tell them they're useless. You'd never tell them they're fat. You'd never tell them they're worthless. You'd never tell them they shoulda, woulda, coulda. So why would you do that to the now you? And I think that's really, really important. So that's probably my biggest tip to people, is start with just realizing how brilliant you really are.
Yeah. And also, I just want to add, because we talked about this earlier in the live, but haven't yet, about compliments, accepting compliments and giving them to people. And I think that is a good, that kind of fits into the tip on kind of self-love. And it's like, if you can't accept a compliment, then you are not able to give them really as honestly and as authentically.
Yeah, and for anyone who missed, you have to retell your story about, you've been reaching out to people and friends and sending them texts when you think about them, because what I was saying was that by our very nature, the evolution of human beings is that we thrive on communication, we thrive on touch. We've not been able to do that, obviously, in 2020, but by having communication with people, I was saying earlier that the reason that being in isolation is the highest form of punishment within a prison is because that is the biggest form of torture. Not having communication with people drives you insane. It would drive you mad. So having that connection is really important. And you were telling the story that, you've been texting friends when they come into your mind and just, saying, I'm thinking about you. And that's gorgeous because really, the compliment syndrome is a big one. And it's a really, really key way of loving yourself, as you say. How often has someone said, Toni, you look brilliant. Oh, you look great. And you go, oh,
yeah,
I'm a bit tired. Or how are you? I'm wrecked. I'm exhausted. Look at me. Look at this old £5 H&M rag I'm wearing. Whereas you don't really think that, it's sort of like our default mechanism to just put ourselves down. And, I have a whole chapter in the book about the voices in our head. It's really, really important to understand that these voices, you have the power over them. So I call mine Mrs. Zippy. She's a puppet. And I stick my hand up her bum and she's got a zip on her mouth. She's like Zippy from Rainbow. And when those negative voices used to come in, I think shining a light on this voice as a really silly, stupid puppet from, a 70s kiddies TV show sort of made it ridiculous. Yeah. And the fact that she was going, oh no, you're wearing a £5 H&M top, you look like crap. And I would then go, shunning you, zipping your mouth, actually, I want to hear the compliment. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you're, it's not big-headed to accept a compliment. It's actually really rude to reject a compliment because that person's gone out of their way to say, Toni, you look brilliant. Amanda, you look gorgeous. I love your dress. So am I going to go, nah, you're lying. You're drunk. You're stupid. Why would you do that? Because eventually there will come a point when they will stop complimenting you because it's exhausting listening to someone constantly saying, I'm fat, I'm stupid, I'm tired, I'm ugly, I'm this, I'm that. So even if you don't believe it, say thank you anyway, because I guarantee you over a period of time, the more you accept the compliment, you will eventually believe it. And it's almost like bricklayers. The more you place the bricks on top of each other, eventually you build a solid house.
Yeah.
And that it's genuine fact. I can almost practically bet this house on it. I don't own it. It's an Airbnb, but I'll bet it on it.
I love that though. It's about being gracious, isn't it? Because then if you can start to be gracious like that, then you can be more gracious with yourself. And
absolutely.
Brilliant advice.
So true.
Do you have a copy of the book there? I know you're Airbnb-ing.
Yes, ma'am.
Of course. It's gorgeous, isn't it?
You know what? I don't hold copies of the book, but I have one for me, and I actually read it. I read it at night. I go to different sections because for the longest time, it took me a year to write the book and I'd obviously written it online. So up until the point that it was a hard copy, I'd never actually physically read the book. So I was reading it online, I was doing proofreads, I was changing, I was editing, all online. So I've still not fully read the hard copy, and it's different. It's different reading it because I want to read it as someone else will read it so that I can just like really take it in. And even reading back my own words sometimes teaches me more because it reminds me to be more present. He's home.
Special guest.
I knew that would happen. For anyone who's watching this now, because of our Insta Live going down, we've run over by about a half an hour. And I was like, husband's going to come home soon and say, what's going on?
Yeah, home is now a TV studio and everything else.
It is. It's 2020.
Well, I very much appreciate you jumping on this Zoom and sharing all of that. And also the book. I mean, thank you for putting it out in the world. And
thank you for having me.
I'm sure so many people will relate to so much of what you've said. So thank you so much. And,
thank you, darling.
I can't wait to see your next sea swim.
Tomorrow
on Instagram. Take care.
Thanks, darling. Bye.